All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Emily Anderson with FranNet. Thanks for joining us today. This is a really, really important topic. Oftentimes when I am working with individuals and we start talking about investment and how much they can realistically and responsibly invest, sometimes they think, well, the more I like the business, the more money I'll invest. Or let me find the business and then I'll figure out how to finance it. And I'm just going to call a timeout. And I'm going to introduce Eric Schecterman with Benetrends. And Eric, just so you know, and I did when I invited people, I did say, we handpicked this individual to talk financing with us. So of course, Eric, no pressure.
None.
But we've got 30 minutes. I am anticipating this is going to be a little fast and furious. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to access and revisit this information at your leisure. If you have any questions, you can chime in or perhaps type them in the chat box. So Eric, I am going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Emily, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for everyone that's taken time to join today and take 30 minutes of their time to make the most powerful investment you can in yourself and the opportunity of learning about business opportunities, funding opportunities. And that's probably, if you take away anything from today, would be my number one suggestion is please take advantage of all of the amazing information that's at your fingertips, between webinars, between working with Emily and her amazing team, between stuff that's posted from different networks and groups throughout the country, the government, the SBA, SCORE. I mean, there's just so much great information, and there's so many preconceived notions about business ownership, about funding, that you'd be blown away by. If you just take the time to learn. And that's really going to be my focus today. I have a few slides, but Emily knows me for a while. I tend to ramble, and putting me in a 30-minute box is pretty tough. When you say, let's talk about funding options. And for those that are looking, this is not a fake Zoom background. I am actually at a franchise conference in sunny Florida right now, and I'm at the Margaritaville Hotel and Restaurant, so that's where you see all of the fun stuff behind me. But Emily, and for the audience, for anyone that's wondering about funding options today, and how somebody funds a business, I think the most important word is options. And I think that's what I've seen the most, especially, I don't know if you call it post-COVID, a little post-COVID anymore, in it, out of it, who knows? But just in today's funding environment, I would tell you on average, I am seeing clients utilizing 2 to 3 different funding strategies at one time, for all different opportunities, whether it's using home equity loans, which we'll talk about, rollover funding, all the miscommunication and misunderstanding of SBA loans, what a portfolio loan is, all of these different things. So I would think the most amazing thing I'm seeing now is knowing all of the options and all the things that are available for an entrepreneur today. So just to start off, because there is so much back and forth about this, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen, if that's okay with everybody. And what I wanted to start off with is just talking about SBA loans. And it really seems to be one of the most popular funding programs that people start their funding search with today. What's fascinating is that the funding search, when it ends, often gets people away from doing SBA loans, which I know sounds contradictory, but everybody we speak to is, let's do an SBA loan, let's do an SBA loan. Why not use somebody else's money? That's the common line that I hear. And I've always been fascinated by that, because I know myself personally, my wife especially, we buy things on a credit card. And I've never bought anything on a credit card and said, man, this is awesome. I'm using somebody else's money. And why is that? Because what am I going to do? I'm going to pay off that credit card with my own money, plus the interest that I've incurred on those charges. And I guess where I get confused is, how is that much different than an SBA loan? In an SBA loan, you're taking a loan from the bank. It's the bank's money, and you are then paying interest back on that money from your own money that you've either generated through the business or personally. So it's really not somebody else's money. Somebody else's money is literally, my father-in-law coming to me saying, here's some money, go buy a business. But taking a loan with an SBA loan, there are certain requirements that are needed. It is very common. The loans do go up to as much as $5 million. There are programs that are out there that are designed to increase the amount of loans that are done for the smaller size loans, like $150,000 and under. Some people call them an express loan. Some people call it a fast track loan. But there are banks that will focus on certain categories. And the way the SBA interest rate works is the government sets a maximum interest rate that the banks are allowed to charge of prime plus 2.75%. So right now, the prime interest rate is 3.25%. That means in today's environment, the maximum that a bank can charge is 6%. Now, as I've mentioned, I've said the bank and the government. That's another big confusing thing with SBA loans. It is not the government lending you the money. It is still the banks that are lending money. It is banks allowed to make their own decisions on what type of businesses to lend to, what type of loan amounts to focus on, what they view as a good candidate, bad candidate. And the government guarantee that's part of an SBA loan that people often talk about, it's not to you, the borrower, it's to the bank. I speak to a lot of people that say, well, I'd love to do an SBA loan, it's guaranteed. Yes, for the bank. Now, that's a good thing, but what the SBA program is designed to do is to incentivize small business lenders, banks throughout the country, to keep putting money out there in entrepreneurial America so that the entrepreneurial spirit can grow and flourish. And in order to incentivize them, the government guarantees a percentage of the loan that they put out there for entrepreneurs, therefore making it less risky for the lender. So the guarantee is for the bank, but for the bank to get that guarantee and to do it through the SBA program, they have to follow these certain terms and conditions, from the interest rate, how much a client's typically going to put down. Usually a bank's going to look for a borrower to inject 20 or 30% of their own money into a business. So if I'm buying a business that say is $200,000 all in, the bank might say, okay, Eric, great. We want you to put $50,000 of your own into the business, and we're going to go ahead and give you a loan on the other $150,000. And that's typically the, loan to value that you would say is available through an SBA loan program. Probably the most important things to know about an SBA loan is, number one, the S in SBA does not stand for speed. It definitely is a process. You have a lot of different checks and balances along the way. But probably the most important things to consider when pursuing an SBA loan is really, one, knowing what you can qualify for. There are so many tools out there where you could start to figure out, almost like getting pre-qualified for a mortgage. Can I get this much or this much? And again, banks are very different. It's not like getting a home mortgage where a house is a house, and if I'm a mortgage lender, I give money to people buying houses. In the small business lending world, some banks like chocolate and some banks like vanilla. Some will say, I love the service-based businesses, and we'll do loans for that all day. Some say, I want brick and mortar, equipment, build outs, larger investment, larger collateral, certain things like that. So knowing what the banks are looking for is really where you want to utilize the expertise of a partner through your SBA process. But just understanding that just because a bank told you no, it doesn't mean that you necessarily found the wrong business. It might just mean you went to the wrong bank. And you hear all the time, well, Eric, I've had a relationship with my local bank for 20 years. Having a personal checking account is very different than getting a small business loan. So just keep those things in mind. Probably the two most important things on SBA lending, and then I'll wrap up on that, is the two most polarizing areas is liquidity and collateral. So I usually give this cheesy line where I say three things matter most when getting an SBA loan: liquidity, liquidity, and liquidity. And what that means is, for the banks today, really what they're looking for is something referred to as post-closing liquidity. So as I mentioned before, if I'm doing an SBA loan and the bank, and I'm buying a business for $200,000, and the bank says, great, we'll go ahead and give you a loan for $150,000, and we want to see $50,000 come from you. What they want to see is that that borrower doesn't just have that $50,000 to put into the business. They want to see that after they inject that $50,000, that they have a good runway of funds left over to continue to support their personal debt service, the business debt, that they're allowing the business to grow before they start pulling money out of that business before it's willing to support it, and that they are not using the loan proceeds to pay for their personal living expenses. So having that post-closing liquid, I have seen save more marginal deals and almost kill other deals that everything else looked good. So that post-closing liquid, there's really no hard or fast formula tied to that. I would say a good minimum of $40,000 or $50,000 in post-closing liquid is sort of what the banks are looking for today. And it also depends on, is there an income coming in? Is a spouse still working? Are there other things? I will tell you, an income will sometimes minimize what the bank is looking for. It's not going to eliminate it, because a bank will not look at as a salary as post-closing liquid. It's future payments. So it's great if somebody has a $500,000 job that they plan on keeping while they go build their side investment business. But the bank will still want to see that there's actually accessible liquid somewhere. And sometimes a bank will view as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, even retirement funds, which we'll talk about, as available liquid capital. So it doesn't just have to be money sitting there in a checking or a savings account. And then the last part is the collateral side. And that is, if an SBA loan is greater than $150,000, so if the requested loan amount is greater than $150,000, the bank requires personal collateral for the loan. And usually that personal collateral is going to be the primary residence. So they are going to collateralize the loan by taking a second lien position on the primary residence, which essentially means your home is being used as collateral for the loan, which is why, in my candid opinion, and keep in mind, Benetrends, one of the way we build our business is helping people get SBA loans. If somebody's pursuing a loan amount that's over $150,000 and they could possibly pursue a home equity line of credit for the same amount of money, which nobody needs Benetrends for, by the way, I would go a home equity line of credit every day of the week and twice on Sunday. You have a lower interest rate. The home is being collateralized anyway. So do you want to collateralize it at 6% on an SBA loan, or do you want to collateralize it at 3.5% to 4% like most people are seeing on home equity lines of credit? Either way, the home is being pledged as collateral. So that's my last little nugget on when you're looking at SBA options. Now, obviously, I mentioned the idea. I'm sorry,
Eric?
Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so personally, I love the S doesn't stand for speed. That's one of the funnier things I've heard in a while with SBA loans. Can you give us an idea of typical turnaround time these days for an SBA loan?
Great question. I'll give you the answer I get from the banks a lot of times. It all depends.
Okay.
But in reality, from the date that we would send a loan package to a bank. And if everyone sort of follows that traditional, because the client has work to do, the bank has work to do. Sometimes it depends if it's brick and mortar or build up, but I would say on average, you're looking at 80 to 100 days from start to finish to actual closing. Now, there's things along the way, like I could submit a loan package to a lender today, and within the next 5 to 7 days, have that lender come back and say, here's a term sheet. We are interested in doing this loan, and here's the terms we would like to offer, which is pretty much a bank saying, we want to do this loan. But then it goes into underwriting and then into closing, and there's checklists along the way. So a term sheet is, I don't want to get myself in trouble and say it's as good as gold, because it still has to go through some checks and balances along the way. But that is a bank saying, this isn't just you plugged in some numbers. They've looked at your business plan, projections, income, liquidity. This is your full SBA package. From that point, you'll within a short period of time get a term sheet. And then actually, but to going all the way, underwriting, closing, everything else, yeah, I'm looking at a 3 to 4 month process.
Okay. And I heard a rumor. Don't our ears perk up whenever we hear, I heard a rumor. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, is that SBA loans that are under 150 are taking longer than the larger loans that are above 150.
Well, rumors usually start from factual events, in my view. And it's funny, I actually just did a webinar with one of the top banks in the country that focuses on that $150,000 loan size and under. So here's why that's not an inaccurate statement. It's not because, so as I mentioned before, banks have different appetites. Some like chocolate, some like vanilla. That applies to loan sizes. SBA loans go up to as much as $5 million. I get calls from 50 banks a week where banks are saying, Eric, I'd love to start working with some brands that Benetrends knows that are 7-figure investments that require real estate and have all these different forms of collateral. I would say right now you're looking in nationally, for a national footprint, single-digit number of banks that are willing to do startup SBA loans for under $150,000. And because that appetite is smaller, the ones that do them get a lot of the volume. And because of the volume, there's a slower period of time. It's not just because they're taking on hundreds of loans versus a bank that, yeah, I'm going to do 5 or 6 loans a month. They might be doing 50 or 60 a month. They're a volume submitter. Also, and I think this will go away, there's also been a huge impact of the PPP loan program on these banks. The PPP loan program was amazing to save a lot of existing businesses. But I think one of the errors of that program is that it never should have been run through the banks. It should have been its own separate entity. You had banks that are now doing hundreds of PPP loans that are guaranteed payment for them, less underwriting, less paperwork. So they're going to do those and not look at the new packages for a period of time. And we're coming out of that a little bit, but you have a backlog of a lot of things. But yes, I don't think that the 150 loan takes longer than other ones. The problem is that the 150 loan has often been called the express program, and there's not many things express about it at the current time. And that's why, and it's a perfect transition, Emily, is
no, you can call me M in front of other people. It's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's why I think we've seen such a migration of people that start, hey, I want to look SBA, and then let me hear about some of these other options. And by the time their process is done, it gets flipped upside down. Because in my view, I think if you took names away from programs and you just lined up costs, time, and interest rates, a lot of different decisions would be made on a lot of things in life, but especially funding. So for example, we talk about using retirement funds to fund a business. And most people's gut reaction is, you've got to be crazy. Who is going to use retirement funds to do a business? And even if they do, I'm going to pay taxes and penalty, or it's probably illegal. I've never heard of this. And what most people don't realize is they have probably already done some form of rollover funding in their life. But instead of doing it for somebody else's business, they can do it for themselves. And what I mean by that, I know we don't have a lot of time to really unpack the full power of retirement plan rollover funding, but it has become one of the most popular forms of funding a new business. I would say probably more rollovers get done in the country through the multiple providers than SBA loans that are probably done in the franchise industry specifically in order to fund a business. And when I mean about people have probably done this in their life, and people hear the word rollovers for business startups, which spells that phenomenal acronym of ROBS, which doesn't sound that great. Or they think about all these different things. And then I tell them, hey, have you ever worked at one company, had a 401k there, and taken a new job that had a 401k and moved your previous employer's 401k over to your new employer's 401k? And I think most in the audience would probably say yes, or they've moved their money to an IRA. And, when they didn't, work at that company anymore, and everyone will typically say yes to that. And then I ask them, did you pay taxes or penalties when you moved that money from one plan to another? And most people will say, no, you don't have to pay tax or penalty when you move money from one plan to another. So I say, okay, so let's park that to the side right now. Second thing I would ask is, have you ever worked for a company, Apple, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, a lot of companies out there that have company retirement plans that you participate in as an employee? And as one of the options in that company plan, you log in to your employee retirement account, you see you could buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And one of the common options is being able to buy stock in the company that's sponsoring the plan, the company I work for. So if I work at Apple and I have a 401k, Apple stock is usually one of the options I can buy within that 401k. And most people are doing what you're doing right now, and they're nodding their head like, yeah, this all makes sense, but I don't know how this helps me fund a business. I know I didn't understand it when I was in corporate America doing the same thing. And it was the founder of Benetrends, Len Fisher, who was actually like the original architect of this rollover funding strategy. And he made the joke and he said, Eric, everybody always says I invented rollover funding. I can thank the ERISA tax laws of the 1970s. I didn't do that. I was just the first to realize you don't need to be a big company to do this. And what I mean by that is, so I worked at a company where I bought company stock through my company retirement plan. And Len asked me, he said, okay, Eric, when you do that, what happened? I think my exact answer was, I don't know. And he said, okay, well, is it fair to say your retirement plan at the company that was your employee plan now owned the shares of stock of the company as its investment? I said, yes, of course. That's what I chose as my plan's investment. He said, okay, great. Where did the money go that your retirement plan used to buy those shares? And I won't use the exact word that I said first, because I'm not going to curse on a webinar. And I said, blank, blank, I have no idea. And he said, well, your plan got the shares. They bought those shares from the company. So the plan used its cash to buy those shares. That money went right to the company that they bought the stock from as the proceeds of sale of company stock. So if I bought $100,000 of Apple stock as an Apple employee through my Apple retirement plan, my plan owned those shares. And then the shares of stock that I own go to my plan. The money my plan used went right to Apple. It went right to their corporate checking account. I didn't lend it to them. They don't owe it back to me. That money is pure liquid in their business account that they can use for working capital, expansion, new business ideas, salaries, bonuses, whatever. So really the way rollover funding works is just setting up that same structure, but instead of funding somebody else's business, you're funding your own. So you would set up a new corporation for your business that has its own company retirement plan. That, of course, in your own business, you're going to be an employee of that company. And as an employee, be able to participate in that company's retirement plan. And as a participant in that plan, I have different types of investment options: stocks, bonds, mutual funds through Fidelity, Schwab, whoever. But of course, what's one of the other investment options going to be? To buy stock in the company itself. And in doing that, my plan would then buy those shares and hold the shares as its investment. And then the corporation has the proceeds from that stock sale. The cash my plan had go directly to its corporate checking account. I didn't loan it to them. It's on early withdrawal. That money is now pure liquid in that corporate account that it can use for franchise fees, payroll, business acquisition, marketing, working capital, even the money that's needed towards getting an SBA loan for that money that the bank wants to see you put into the business or create some post-closing liquidity. So rollover funding has become a huge, huge asset to the industry of small business ownership and entrepreneurs. And I just think knowing these options of not just needing an SBA, do I look at rollover funding? Do I look at how does a home equity line of credit line up versus an SBA loan? Even on top of that, a lot of people don't realize that if you have a stock portfolio outside of a retirement account, that can be used just like a home can be used for a line of credit. So just like I get a line of credit for a home equity line of credit, I can use my stock portfolio as a line of credit. So I don't have to sell my stocks, walk away from the investments, pay capital gains tax, keep my investment portfolio, call my investment manager up, say, what could I get on a leveraged line or portfolio line of credit? And you can usually get a line of credit for 70 to 80% of the value of your portfolio at an interest rate, probably half of what you're earning on the investments. So I lend against cheaper money that is making me money. It's a pretty cool strategy. And I've seen clients today buy a business literally with a combination of all of these things. I've seen somebody use one for one thing, one for another. And I know we're getting tight on time, but I think the idea today is learn about all of your options. What you think might make the most sense, you'd be amazed when you get to the end and you just look at ease of use, cost of capital, timeline, and how it works. You'd be amazed how the different options can look from a different viewpoint. So, Emily, I wanted to give time for anyone to either chime in. I don't have like a Q&A box open in front of me, but I don't know if you had any specific questions. I'm happy to hang around. Obviously, I have nowhere to go except sit here next to the pool. So happy to answer any questions that you think you'd like people to address.
Thanks, Eric. If anybody has any questions, feel free to speak up or type them in the chat. I will echo and validate a lot of what Eric said. Is it's really all about understanding your options, and what I'm seeing right now with my clients is that they are in fact using a combination of just the very things you were talking about, Eric. Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, not to plug anything on here, what Emily and the great people at FranNet do, or business coaches or anything, be careful what you find on the internet. You know, it's easy to go on there and find random businesses that are listed, but there's a reason that people will work with somebody like Emily to find the right business. When it comes to funding options, there's some really good companies out there. Benetrends, Guidance, Fran Fund. These are all good companies that know what they're doing. They work with all business entities and banks throughout the country. It doesn't take a lot right now for me to go and buy an ad on the internet and say, we offer SBA loans or do this or do that. And in reality, they're just making themselves the middle person, where they know how to do rollover funding and they farm it out. This is your future. Get connected to the right people. Emily is the ultimate connector. That's what I've always said about her. So she's got great partners, from funding to brands to opportunities. And at Benetrends, we're happy to help anybody, whether they're going to need one of our programs or not. We just like speaking to entrepreneurs, wantrepreneurs, whatever it may be. And if we could put you on the right path, we're always happy to help.
I might borrow that wantrepreneur expression. That's a new one to me. Okay.
I stole it from someone else, so you're more than welcome.
Eric, thank you so much for taking some time out of your conference. And I'm glad at least you got to sit outside and enjoy the weather. Just thank you for providing so much information. It's just a reminder as this was being recorded, and I will send a link to the recording to everybody that registered so you can watch this, rewatch it, let some of the information sink in, and feel free to reach out to myself or Eric if you have any questions or would like to have a follow-up conversation. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Safe travels to you, Eric. Take care. Bye.
Hi, Emily. I just
Hi.
thought I'd say hi. It's Kim.
Hi. So good to see you.
Sorry I was late, but I got a little bit.
Totally fine. Totally fine. Hi, Ahmed. I'm glad you're here too. I got to jump onto a client call, but girl, I'll be following up with you.
Let's get together soon. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.